Fozzie, what is this?
Oh, Kermit, it's my new ball.
I'm talking about this mess.
Oh, that was the packaging.
You know, Fozzie, when you buy things that are overpackaged, you create more garbage and hurt the environment.
I do?
Try to choose products that aren't overpackaged and recycle whenever you can.
You mean like this banana peel?
You can recycle a banana peel?
Sure. Yeah!
To find out how you can help, write to Make a Difference, National Wildlife Federation, Washington, D.C. 20036.
Isn't comedy wonderful?
It sure is.
Love that. I love that.
Yeah,
I love Kermit.
The Muppets are the best, and I've been tracking down all these old. I mean Peggy looked up that address, and it's no longer valid. But finding these old PSAs out there, which still resonate, and it actually takes us to a subject that I want to get into, which is recycling. If you're gonna,
I can't wait. Can't wait.
well, and if full disclosure, I was president of the Chicago Recycling Coalition for 6 years, so I've had a little bit of involvement in this issue over the years, and the question let me ask you, Sandra, how much did CSO work with Streets and Sand and get involved when you were in that office in the recycling program?
Well, CSO, the first part of my job was just getting to know all the different department areas. So I did meet with Streets and Sanitation to talk about recycling and got a chance to learn about their education initiatives. And then I think the Better Government
Association.
Association.
That happened while on your watch, right?
Yeah, it did.
We've had Madison Hopkins on our show. She wrote a couple of articles. One was about the double dipping by Waste Management, and who just, by the way, I believe just the other day, Lakeshore started picking up the recycling in Chicago. So Waste Management was not brought back. And so she did that first article about why are so many blue cards being tagged as contaminated, and where is that going? And then she did the second investigation a year later, when you were talking earlier, Suzanne, about fines and fees, she was talking about how virtually none of the high rises in the city of Chicago are ever fined for not having recycling systems, and there are plenty out there. Why did that happen, Suzanne?
Why did what part?
Well, okay, I'm going to work my way backwards.
Question?
Why is it that the city could never find it in its heart to fine the people who are violating it has
nothing about having it in their heart. Again, that's an enforcement and operational issue. So when you pass an ordinance, so here's the problem. And you were saying this last night, I think in an email, why can't policies and ordinances, is it too difficult, whatever. It is a very meticulous process to build an ordinance. And you want everybody to get behind it. Otherwise, it's just going to people are going to talk smack about it, and they're not going to work with you on it. And so every ordinance we tried to work on, we tried to bring in all the people who'd be for it, against it, what have you, and come up with something that people not only could live with, whether they liked it or not, but that was operational. Because if you pass an ordinance and you haven't figured out, the next step is regulations, you haven't figured out how to enforce that ordinance, how to operationalize that ordinance, it's waste. So we have, the plastic bag, we have all these different kinds of things, which are really
or how
important.
to budget for it.
Right. Mm-hmm. If you haven't figured out the operations, you haven't figured out how to make an ordinance work. And so in that case, with Streets and Sand, how many people would it take to actually inspect multi-unit buildings across the city of Chicago? I don't know the answer to that, but it certainly wasn't at the top of their priority when people are saying, can you pick up my branches in the back or what have you, right? And so the way Streets and Sand is designed, it's very much it's a reactive. It's like, we want to serve our people. We want to serve our aldermen. So if somebody gets an aldermanic call and says, we'll get to this later, cut down my tree or what have you, it's Streets and Sand makes the city hum, right? We, garbage and towing and whatever and plowing. But so much of it is reactive. And so a proactive approach to that would have been to really figure out how do you merge and look at the inspection process that Streets and Sand has, and maybe other departments together, and figure out how you can make sure those inspections happen. And so one of the challenges is that, you get, if I recall a long time ago, it was a teeny little ticket. And so property managers are like, I'll take my chances. They'll never get here. Most times they didn't. So they didn't do it, because recycling in this city, and Sandra and everybody else would love to hear my theory on this, is it's expensive because it's cheaper to throw things away in this region than to recycle, because our landfill costs are so low, right? So I don't remember what they are now, but back in the day, it was like $40 a cubic something. I don't remember what the number
Cubic
was,
yard?
maybe. And but in San Francisco, it was 160. In New Jersey, it was 180. So they can afford to compost and recycle, because the money they save from not dumping in a landfill, they can use a margin of that to do the recycling, to do the composting infrastructure, those kinds of things. So that's always been a big problem. I'm getting never mind. I'm getting notes from somebody that's here.
That's okay. You're allowed to cheat. It's okay.
Yeah, no, just make sure, like, everybody's excited about this, right? We're all passionate about these issues. So anyway, I mean, that's the problem, is if we don't figure out how to operationalize an ordinance, and you don't work with the people whom you will be enforcing against, right? Or enforcing with, or the people you're protecting, then you don't really know how it works, and then the system doesn't work.
All right, let me ask you a question about that. You talked about inspectors and that sort of thing. What kind of responsibility did the Department of the Environment have in the recycling realm, both for the high rises and for residential buildings?
We did not have any enforcement responsibility.
It's all Streets and Sand, right?
It was all Streets and Sand. And so our job was to, what DOE did often, Department of Environment, is we were like kind of it would start out as like a think tank. You'd bring the departments together. You'd think about what are the challenges. We'd go out and do research. We'd bring people together. We'd figure out what are the best solutions. What are the funding sources? What are all those things? Work with the operational departments and say, okay, looks like, what if we looked at it this way or that way? How could we pass solid legislation that could operationalize what we want to see in our city? And who are all the players, and what are the costs and operations? So with soil and rubble ordinance, our water ordinance, our energy ordinance, all those became, I think, really cool partnerships with departments and players and construction people and all those kinds of things to make it functional.
And I feel like they took all of those roles and responsibilities from the DOE and put them right into the CSO spot. And there's no way one office, one person could do all of that. And I just want to touch on the recycling piece, because that article from BGA was great, and it highlighted a lot of issues with the recycling structure as it existed and currently exists today. And the aldermen, there were a couple aldermen that got that caught their attention, and they called the CSO, they called me, they called Streets and Sanitation, and we sat down to just chat about how the work, how it was currently operationalized. And what I learned is it is a waste management for the city to actually like do waste management itself is very expensive, because the contracts with the Streets and Sand and the workers at the city require that each truck have 2 people. Waste management and other waste companies can do the work with 1 person in the truck. And that was a huge cost differential. We actually crunched the numbers, because there was a discussion about, well, what if the city just does all of that? And there was no momentum within the office to actually like talk about paying for that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I think,
go ahead.
Sorry. I mean, I think that when we want to talk about change, if we don't talk about unions as part of change, you're not talking about change. And this isn't a union slamming moment. Unions have an important place, but oftentimes the unions are stuck in the old days. And what happens in this instance, to use Sandra's example, one person to two people, oftentimes Streets and Sand has three people. And the big challenge is the motor truck driver position. And that's a person who drives the truck and sits in the truck the entire time, whether they're pruning a tree or picking up recycling or any of that. So, I think that is a huge cost. It's the personnel cost in doing that. And then it's outfitting a truck, like in the suburbs or private companies who oftentimes have a lifter of its own. The person drives, they use the lifter to pick up the dumpster, dump it in, and go. So it's like a dead in the water kind of thing, because you're cutting positions if you do it in a more efficient manner that many, many, many cities and businesses do already.
So
and you're cutting labor, and then you also have to look at your fleet. And at the time, there weren't enough waste trucks to actually serve the entire city, because we've outsourced it to other waste haulers.
So
it's a lot of cost issues.
Yeah. So it sounds like this has to be reworked from the ground up if we're going to increase the percentage, the horrible recycling rate that we have in the city of Chicago.
Well, there's two pieces to that.
Yeah.
One is that the waste is actually a commodity, right? And I don't know about the new ordinance. And by the way, I will always plug Chris Sauvé at Department of Streets and Sanitation. He is a lone wolf of leadership and wants to do the right thing, and is quite helpful and collaborative, but he gets, the politics and everything kind of get involved, and the economics and everything get involved. And that's really hard to push up against, around, etc. But the reality
and folks should know Chris Sauvé has been there. He's the head of basically the recycling end of things, and he's been there now through 3 administrations. He was there when Daley was there, and through Rahm and Lori Lightfoot. And yeah, I'm glad you're explaining this, because there are some people, and I'm listed among them, wondering, well, if you're working so hard, why are you getting nowhere? Why have we not gotten anywhere with this?
Yeah, why is the news always the same?
Right. And how often have you had Chris on your show?
I have not had him on in a long time.
How often do you see him in the media? Very little, because you don't put somebody at that level into the media, because the message has to be controlled. I mean, that's politics, that's government, of course. But there's a lot of knowledge in that department and many others about what can and should be done. But really it is, it's, do you have the cojones? I used to say conejos, and people told me that was rabbits. Do you have the cojones? I really was. I said conejos for like 2 years, and people are finally like, Suzanne, do you know you're saying rabbits?
Yes. Yes, and they're listening.
But do you have the cojones to take on big issues like labor, and the way that we're all used to doing things, including serving your aldermen operationally? If you take that power, that resource out, and make it more operational as opposed to political, you get a lot more efficiencies, but then people lose some of their oomph, because they don't have their own team who can go out and do things based on people's requests.
Right. And the other data point I want to share is Chris is an amazing fount of information. And at the time I was in the office, was around the time China decided they weren't going to take our plastic anymore. And Chris and I talked about, where's the market? Where do we send all this plastic? And I don't know if it's changed, but at the time, there was no place to take it. And on top of that, you have companies that create, they create plastic every day out of virgin materials, like detergent companies, for example, laundry detergent. And it's actually cheaper for them to buy virgin material than it is for them to buy material from recycled plastic to make their products. And until that shifts, we need demand for those recycled plastic products, and we don't have it in this country. And on top of that, we don't have a lot of places in the country that can actually recycle the plastic and turn it into usable materials. And those are the types of conversations that Chris and I would have at least on a weekly basis. So he's another example of folks within the city that have the knowledge and know what needs to happen. They don't have a Department of Environment behind them as a collaborative, connective tissue to help make change within the city.
Okay, I don't want to get bogged down on just this topic, but let me end it by asking each of you, if you were going to make a change in recycling tomorrow, just to start, just to get us on the right path, what would it be?
I have two, so it's just not fair.
You have two?
I have two.
Go.
That are
Go for it.
All right. So remember the words reduce, reuse, recycle?
Yeah.
Reduce is about not providing that waste in the first place. So there are a lot of cities that have ordinances now about not allowing packaging, not allowing certain things. People in some places take their products and they take off the wrapping at the store and then bring it home. They don't have that waste, and then it's up to the commercial enterprise to do something with that waste. There was a
So it's
large
back on the manufacturer.
Right. So you push it to the manufacturer and you make them do it. Will it make the price go up? Probably a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the price of waste, and both environmentally and economically, it's worth it. So that's one thing. It's just a whole zero waste aspect of this. And there's a great, really well thought out program that had Streets and Sand and everybody involved that we were pushing towards, and that died. The other thing is waste franchising. I can't say enough about that, because that's where competition really comes in and where efficiencies really come in. Indianapolis has it. Arlington Heights has it.
What is, excuse me, Suzanne, what is waste franchising?
Waste franchising is it is a competitive, privately run waste program, and Streets and Sand could be part of it. There's ways to do it where instead of having companies bidding for that multi-unit and another company for that multi-unit, they get a zone. And that's kind of what's been going on with Blue Cart, et cetera, but it's for everything. It's for commercial, it's for industrial, residential, everything. And so what happens
the whole neighborhood or the whole ward.
Exactly. I think our plan was like 6 to 9 areas. So it was more than just a ward. And that company would do everything. They would pick up, again, multi-unit, single, commercial, industrial, everything. And we were pushing for that, and we got slaughtered by the waste companies.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? I mean, it was literally, the mayor said to me, "This is just too bloody. You just have to give up." And what that does, think about it. You have one truck going down our alleys, right? You have fair pricing across the area too. And
right. And what you're saying is right now you can have two large buildings next to each other, and one has one service and one has another service. Mm-hmm. and then the one goes to this building and then is going 7 blocks over and 16 blocks that way too.
And charging a different rate.
And that's the key thing is, talk about environmental justice. The research we did, low-income communities were oftentimes paying 3 or 4 times the cost for their dumpsters to be picked up in businesses or whatever than they were in higher-income communities. It just made me shiver because it's so disgusting.
You would bring back or attempt to bring franchising into the equation.
Absolutely.
And Sandra, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's related to what Suzanne's saying. I would make it easier for people to recycle, period. Because kind of education is really important, and making it easy for folks to do that. Have delivering bins on time, having neighborhood folks involved in the recycling process, making them a part of it, when I feel like that's not necessarily true in every community. Well, and we really do have to make them part of that.
To be fair, there have been block captains, and this was an effort that I don't know if it still continues, but it certainly was a big part of it back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm not sure
Yeah,
that
there's a
exists right now.
few. Yeah, I get a few emails from recycling block captains still,
Okay.
and they were all. I hate that. I'm not going to use that word. So they all had kind of an infrastructure in place, so they could work a certain amount of blocks and let everybody know today's your day for recycling. We had signs that you could put up in your front yard, etc. But really, to go, it's not even just that. It's like, why would people recycle, especially if they think it's getting dumped in the garbage?
Well,
Well, that's the
and
thing.
that's
We
yeah.
have to tell the story about why it's important and re-engage folks in just like those old commercials with, give a hoot,
Kermit.
don't pollute. We have to
Yeah,
reignite folks and help them get passionate about recycling and help them understand how it helps improves our lives. We have to have that conversation, and I don't think we're having that on a block by block neighborhood level, and we need to if we're going to make it. And I think single sort when folks had to sort their own recycling, I think that made a difference. And when we started telling people that you could just throw it all in one bin and we'll sort it for you at the plant, that I think kind of disconnects people from the importance of recycling.
We had Marta Keene from Will County on the show a few weeks ago, and I asked her. I said, "Do you think single stream recycling, that is where you throw the paper and the metal and the glass all in one cart?" I said, "Is that the best thing that ever happened to recycling, or the worst thing that ever happened to recycling?" And I think the jury's out. Nobody really knows, because
Yeah.
now we're looking at glass as a contaminant, and it's one of the most eminently recyclable products out there.
right.
And
Well, have you guys ever gone to one of the MRFs, municipal
Yeah.
recycling
Yeah.
and bubble
Yeah.
facility?
Yep.
So when Blue Cart first started, when Blue Bag, don't even get me started, but Blue Cart,
I'm glad you feel that
yeah,
way.
blah, it was incredible technology. I mean, and it was employing people in these centers and their magnets, and you could see how all the different types of materials went into separate areas and got organized, et cetera. And of course, there was a market then. But I agree with Sandra. It's education and engagement. It's also the massive lack of trust in the government that they're going to actually do something with it. There's so much cynicism.
Yeah.
I have a hard time. I recycle every
But
day.
but I'm going to stop you there, Suzanne. I would argue that the city of Chicago engendered that cynicism by
Absolutely.
Blue Bag,
Absolutely.
because
Oh, I completely
Blue Bag
agree.
was a terrible failure, and what it taught the people of Chicago is that the system doesn't work, and they still believe that.
Right. But people who
I
are
agree.
engaged also know that the Blue Cart stuff, a lot of that was getting dumped. And so, and I don't know the state now, but I do know when I put my stuff out in the Blue Cart, I say to myself, there's a little part in my heart going, God, I hope it goes somewhere.
Yes.
Oh,
I
that's
feel the same way.
oh
Yep.
man.
It's true. It's true.
It's true.
Well, and
Yeah.
I'm going to agree with you, Sandra. Education, education, education. We have done so little in that regard. And now things have gotten much more complicated. We have so many different materials. People throw plastic toys in there. They throw CDs in. They throw everything. That
Plastic bags.
the whole idea of
Yeah.
wishful recycling. I don't like putting it on the backs of the consumer, because I don't think the consumer has been given a chance to do it right. On the other hand, the consumer needs to be educated. And so how do we make
And
that
not
happen?
just once. That's the thing, not just once. It's an
It's
ongoing
a continuous process.
All right,
Yes.
and one more thing before we go, we got a message from Carter O'Brien, who you
Hi,
know
Carter.
from
Hi,
the
Carter.
from the Field Museum and Chicago Recycling Coalition. He says it is completely illogical to have the Department of Streets and Sand in charge of inspecting buildings they do not service. In my opinion, the Department of Buildings should be charged with enforcing recycling in those 5+ unit buildings. Just make it one more box they check when they are already there for safety-related inspection, like elevators, fire escapes, and so on. That makes
Just like gas stations, just like restaurants, just like there is a completely bifurcated enforcement process that could be made a lot more efficient.
yeah, and I'm telling you, I know it's complex, and as we just discussed for 20 minutes, it is a very complex issue. I've always thought also that it boils down to political will, and that the person at the top has to say, make this happen, please.
Yep.
You
And
know,
it's
it's
got to be easy for the actual person doing the recycling as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
For sure.
it does.
And it may sound simplistic, but it's okay. It's and we're going to be breaking here in just a second, but it's like that. I sent you an article the other day about the collisions, bird collisions
Birds.
at McCormick Place. Okay. And the study comes out, and this is not a fly-by-night thing, no pun intended. Wow, I can't believe I said that. But these birds.
As we're migrating to a new topic, yes.
Thank you very much.
Uh,
All right.
ding.
But we could reduce bird mortality by 60% just by turning off half the lights at McCormick Place. And this is a study that Doug Stotts, who's been on our program, he's from the Field Museum, was part of this. So these are experts who are deciding this. So if I'm the mayor, I look at that and I say, make that happen tomorrow. Why does that not happen tomorrow? What is it about our system that it can't work that way?
This has been going on for 20 years. We started the Lights Out program in, I don't even know when that was, a long time ago. And and you can even do it in a good faith effort with buildings. What we learned is Hancock, all these places, by turning off their ornamental lighting during these critical times, they save energy.
Since 1999, actually.
Yeah. So so it's the cleaning people that are working there at nights and the lights are on, put the blinds down. I mean, there's a lot of simple things that can be done, but there's no communication about it. And so
well, I'm looking from a policy standpoint here, and a person like a CSO or a commissioner of the Department of the Environment, can't you grab the mayor and say, can you please make this happen? It will make a big difference.
Well, the question is making what happen, right? So you have to, again, it's a bunch of pieces. So the Building Owners and Managers Association, who have all the big buildings downtown, they're a key partner. You have to have them involved. It can be done, but it has to be regular communication and acknowledgement of people who are doing the work. And then they say, yeah, I want to look good. Yep.
And you may have to incentivize them too, right?
Yep.
What was that, Sandra?
Right. I said it's education, and you may have to incentivize the building owners through something like Retrofit Chicago or some other existing lever that could be a communication vehicle to get owners to turn their lights off.
But again, those wheels have to start rolling so that every day that you don't do this, it's hundreds or thousands of birds that die. All right.
The study comes out. Yeah. It's in Block Club. It's in the Tribune. A bunch of people talk about it. How does it then get implemented? Where?
Right.
And
so
whose job is it to take that ball and run with it?
Yeah. There's the carrot and stick, right? There's the incentive, and then there's the stick. Chicago bird collision monitors. What if they were out and they charged a certain amount for every bird they found next to a building? You know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of ways this could be done, but it's not undoable.
And one more thing before we break here that I think is pretty important from Audrey Fisher, our friend. We know Audrey Fisher. And she says, Suzanne and Sandra, please include the issue of light pollution in Chicago. This has to do with what we're talking about now.
Absolutely.
When talking about the state of the environment in Chicago, we had a phenomenal opportunity to dramatically reduce light pollution in Chicago. Yet instead, Chicago installed horrific blue, rich, bright white lights. And I see on my local the online group for this part of the city, Logan Square, people are always writing, why is that light so bright? It's shining through my bedroom window. Instead, Chicago installed those lights that are harmful to the environment, ecosystems, and humans. As one of the first graduates of the Chicago Conservation Corps, there we go, I would be more than happy and willing to teach C3 about light pollution and how to reverse it in Chicago, and would greatly appreciate a chance to talk with the right people to get Starlight back over Chicago.
Let's make it happen, girlfriend.
Yeah.
And there's this group called the Adler Planetarium. I don't know if you've heard of them, but we've got like one of the most brilliant research groups there who know this stuff. Like, collaborate.
Well, and when we get back to bureaucracy here, if you want to talk deep state is, the right wing likes to talk about deep state and just being nefarious and so forth. I'll tell you what deep state is. It's bureaucrats in a place like the city of Chicago that don't change over time. A couple of years ago, I went out with Alderman.
Yeah, what was that? 3 years ago we were out.
I thought it was 2 years ago, but Scott Wagasback, we went out there with Audrey and some other folks, and we tested the lights new lights they had put in.
Humboldt Park.
They were. This was in Humboldt Park.
The LED lights.
Yeah, the new ones, and they were way up on the blue spectrum, which is too blue. They're at 3,000 K. And we had a guy from Canada, a company who had a 2,200 K light, warm,
Full
nice,
spectrum light.
beautiful glow. We could not get Scott could not get the city's attention at all.
So what's the question? Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just going to say they were saying that I think the purchase is done. We're installing these.
Contract in, whether they're the right temperature or not. They went off the old study.
But
that was
right, and it's also, I mean, as Sandra knows, as an engineer, right? Which I didn't know you were. That's super cool. There are a lot of engineers who are most concerned about redundancy. Is it going to do the same amount of work as the other one? And the question is violence. I mean, really, it's about safety. Period. And so, are you sure it's going to cover the same amount of area? If it's not as bright, will it be not as good? There's a lot of education and science.
There is. And part of the studies show that if you have a softer glow, it's easier for people to adapt, to the light. So you actually see better with a lower Kelvin.
Yeah, color was a huge thing in the lower Kelvin. You could see more.
So anyway.
Yeah, and the other piece to kind of the one-for-one thing is what I'm observing is they're putting the LED lights in the existing fixtures. And I'm wondering if anybody ever had the discussion, do we need fewer fixtures with better, more effective lighting?
Well,
I don't think that's happening, which is Chicago's overlit, period. There's too many lighting fixtures on the street anyway, and now they're just putting in brighter light in the same number of fixtures. It doesn't really make sense.
Because we're
and
terrified.
Cities like LA and others, they did the research about if you put in an infrastructure that looks like XYZ ABC, you're going to city save a ton of money. By like year 6, you'll have paid it all back, right? In energy costs alone. So again, there's an economics to this that if it's thought through, and again, then there's the political will, because oftentimes there's a cost up front, that it just makes sense environmentally and economically.
Okay.
Right. And if you fly over LA or DC, you'll see that there's a huge reduction in light in the light pollution, but the streets are lit. They feel the same as they did before they did the retrofit.
And we did not learn that lesson in Chicago. All right, we need to take this break. When we come back, we're going to talk environmental justice and trees. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki, Suzanne Malec-McKenna, Sandra Henry are with us, and we hope you stick around for yet one more half hour of discussion.